Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Friday at 4. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you had a wonderful New Year's holiday. And as always, I'm with Amanda Van Deerheiden. Amanda, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. We're excited to be here for another exciting episode of Friday at 4.
So I think what we'd like to talk about today is setting some goals. We know that, for a lot of people, it's your first day back in the office after maybe 2 weeks, a week and a half, a week, and you're catching up. Your inbox is overwhelmed. Your desk is overwhelmed. But it's time to look forward. So it's the new year. New goals are going to be set. So let's talk about setting goals and determining how we get those goals and how we become successful. Amanda, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So most people have heard the expression set SMART goals, right? SMART. Be specific, make sure it's measurable, make sure it's actually attainable, make sure it's realistic, make sure it's timely. But I like to talk about smarter goals. So I add an ER to that acronym, well-known acronym. And the E and the R the E is for evaluating and the R is for reassessing once you've evaluated. So you want to make sure that you're setting specific goals, that they're actually achievable, and that you have timelines attached to it. So one of the things we like to do is, once you've set a goal, it's very easy. It's very easy to reverse engineer it and figure out, what do I need to do? How do I break it down so I can achieve this in the number of days, weeks, months, years I have to do it? And one of the things that I actually do is I have my clients do as well. I have them create a list. I want to see, what are their life goals? What are their annual goals? What are their quarterly goals? And what are their, of course, monthly goals, which feeds then into your daily and weekly agenda items. And the reason why this works is because it's so much easier once you've actually identified what your goal is. How to get there is easy. You create steps, you create an action plan, you can break it down. But Jim, the harder thing that people have an issue with is, what is the goal to set, right? So Jim, how do you go about identifying what the goal is that you want to accomplish?
Well, one of the first things that I do, and one of the first things that I teach when I'm training or giving advice to people, is I do what I call a daily diary as well as a weekly diary, and I do this for a couple reasons. I set my agenda for the day. These are goals that I expect to get done by the end of the day. Then I do something for the end of the week. And then, like you, I have my monthly goals, my quarterly goals, and my yearly goals. But how do you determine what are those goals? So I look at, in the beginning, the big picture. If a year from now I'm having this conversation with Amanda, how do I know I've had a successful year? How can I determine that? And I determine that obviously by the goals that I set. So I look at the big picture and I say, where do I want to be a year from now? Once I figure that out, and that's both in my professional career, maybe my personal career, uh, maybe within helping friends and family and so forth. But where do I want to be a year from now? And I think that's important. And then I work backwards. Where do I want to be 6 months from now? Where do I want to be a quarter from now? Where do I want to be next week when it comes to maybe a business deal or from a professional side? I know a lot of people, we enter the new year, and what's two of the most popular things people try to set a resolution for? Losing weight and exercising. Most people fail, right? Myself included, when it comes to that. And part of that reason is because we don't set realistic goals for ourselves on how to get there. And then we don't lay out the game plan on how to get there. But we have to be able to do that. So for me, I start out with the diary. You use a list, I use a diary. At the end of the day, I strike out what I've completed and try to figure out why I haven't completed the other items on the list, and either move them into the next year I mean, next day, next month, or so forth. That's how I go about looking at my goals. Where do I want to be at XYZ time? And once I figure that out, and for everybody it's different, but once I figure that out, like you, I work backwards.
Absolutely. So, what Jim's talking about is a rule of priorities. So, you want to make sure to not overwhelm and put 10 things on your list for the day, unless they're very small action items. You want to make sure that usually it's three. I've heard experts say 3 to 5, but you want to make sure. I do the same thing. I write out everything I want to accomplish, even if it's 20 things, whether it's a week, a day, etc. And then I star the top 3 priorities of the day. So if you're being intentional, right, with your priorities, it'll be easier to identify what you do. I mean, if I asked you, what did you accomplish last month? Your eyes are going to glare over. You're not going to know. But when you do these daily diaries like Jim talks about, and my checklist for the day, I can easily audit myself and figure out what were my major achievements for that day, that week, that month, etc. And the way that that helps is you can start to see your progression. So one of the things Jim talked about was, resolutions failing. And that's because people don't set realistic ones, but it's also because they don't see immediate results. So one way to actually feel like you're accomplishing something before you've lost 50 pounds is to be able to check off a much smaller task, to break it down into more manageable tasks. So you want to be prioritizing correctly. You want to be making sure that you're breaking it into smaller steps so that you feel victorious, because you might have something that's set, a goal that's set for the end of the year. That's a long ways away, and it's easy to procrastinate, and it's easy to get lost if you're not looking at it every day. So that's one thing I like to always remind my clients, is that you want to keep it small and manageable, but that way it builds over time. Jim,
I
anything to add on that piece?
Absolutely. And I think a good example of that would be, look, you're sitting at your desk today, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, first week in January, correct? So you say to yourself, my goal from a career perspective is to be promoted, maybe within the organization, maybe external, go try to find another position. But just saying that, while that's a good goal, is just one thing. You then have to work backwards. How do I get to that point where, number one, I can be considered for promotion, and number two, I'm actually can look back a year from now and say, I'm now promoted. I'm now in that other position. And so what both Amanda and I are saying is, and it's a term we always hear, it's baby steps. Baby steps. This is what I need to do, whether it's working on a resume, whether it's getting some coaching, whether it's getting advice from the outside, whether it's talking to my superior and seeing what they expect from me in order to be considered for that next step up in my career, whether it's starting a job search. But if you take it all at once, it becomes overwhelming. And chances are you're not going to do any of it, because that's what happens to us, right? Too much information, too much stimuli hits us. We shut down, we get into the minutia of the day, and before we know it, it's April 1st, and a whole part of the year has gone by. So figure out what that goal is, and then work backwards, small steps, and figure out, because that way, look, it's like a map, right? If you want to get from New York to LA, you can just drive west till you hit the ocean and then figure out if you need to go north and south, and you'll get there. But if you do small increments, the first day you need to be here, Pittsburgh, then Chicago, then Boise, then Salt Lake City, then LA, you know where you are during your trip. You can make adjustments, and you can actually then say, you know what, I'm ahead of schedule. I'm behind schedule, and you have realistic information that you're working with. And that's kind of what we're saying. Now is the time to make that map, to make that plan. It gives you plenty of time during the year to deviate from some of your choices, but you won't have to go backwards. You will figure out where you are, and you'll know why you're there.
Yep, that's a perfect example. So let's say your goal is to get a new job. Well, that's not a smart goal, right? But if you break it into a specific So I want to be at this level within this organization or externally. Measurable is, how are you going to measure your success on that? Well, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to 5 people every week. I'm either going to apply to a job post, I'm going to reach out to a contact, I'm going to go speak to someone about the job that I'm looking for. That's easy to check off it, whether or not you've accomplished it or not. Is it attainable? Yes, I have time in my schedule to reach out to 5 people this week. Is it realistic? Yes, I'm ready. I have the skills. I have the qualifications. I have my resume updated. I have my LinkedIn updated. I'm ready to go. Is it timely? When do you want to achieve this by? By December 31st, 2020, I want to be in a new role within an organization. Okay, great. And then you add my little ER to the end of it. So at the end of 30 days, you've set those specific parameters. You should be evaluating. You should be saying, okay, I've spent 30 days. How many people have I reached out to? Is my resume responding to people? Are people interacting with my LinkedIn profile? You want to assess that. And then comes the R, which is reassess and say, you know what? I've been reaching out to 5 people a week and it's not enough. Or I've been reaching out to 5 people a week and I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need to scale it back to 3. So that's the reason. That's one way you can take a goal like I want a new job and make it smarter.
And you know what? One of the things that I think you hear in this talk is it, we all have that positive influence, right? It's the new year. We're all looking to move forward, regardless of where we are and what it is. It's all fresh for us, right? There's nothing like the chance for a do-over in a new year, but it can become overwhelming. And when it does, one thing that I think Amanda would agree, I know people that I work with, both internally and externally agree, sometimes it really does help to sit down and talk with someone. Share your ideas for where you want to be a year from now and talk about what you need to do to kind of get there. We're here to help. We're here to, if you feel that you'd like to just talk about your career objectives, Amanda and I and our staff are here to help you. And there are other people out there as well. But don't try to just go at it alone, because there's too many things going on during the course of our day, our week. It'll get put in the back burner. And once that happens, as we know, as you get older, time flies, and we'll be sitting here in 2021 and we'll be having the same conversation. So Amanda, maybe you can talk about, in the time we have left, the benefits of actually verbalizing your thoughts on and your plans on where you'd like to be.
Yeah, so there's a lot of this in habit research. So habit research actually shows us that when you tell someone your commitment, you're more likely to do it because you don't want to be seen as somebody who doesn't follow through on their commitments. If you write it down, you're making a commitment to yourself. You're more likely to actually accomplish something if you write it down physically, not type it, physically write it down the old school way, paper and pen. There's also a lot of other stuff that habit research. I love habit research, as you all know by this point, but I'm happy to share that information with all of you. And like Jim said, sometimes you're not able to do it alone. And it's easy to accomplish a goal once you've set it. But sometimes the hardest thing in the world is figuring out what you want and setting a goal that is smarter. So sometimes just having someone to say, this is my goal, does that make sense? Similar to how Jim threw out there getting a new job, and then I fine-tuned it because it didn't have specific measurements around it. So if you want to share your goals with us, we want to hear what your goals are, where you're headed. And even if you just want a sounding board, we love to act as a sounding board and think through how we can better assist you. So please reach out and let us know what's on your mind, even if it's just to say hi. We love to hear from you. And Jim, I'll let you wrap it up for the day.
And that's a good point. Look, we'd love to hear some of your goals, and we'd love to talk about them. We'd love to get some goals on the shows over the course of the next couple weeks. We have some exciting formats coming up. We have a new web page that's going to launch next week, so we'll have some exciting news around that as well, which will include our calendars and other useful information. So we have internally, Amanda and I have a lot of goals that we're setting on where we want to be for the next year. But we want you guys to come along for the ride. It'll help us, and I think it'll benefit our community as well. You know, from a positive note, our podcast last week broke our all-time record in downloads, and I can't thank everybody enough for that. Our website is www.grtas.net. That's grtas.net. Our new one will launch next week, and we'll talk about that. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, and we appreciate the fact that you're giving us this time every week to come into your kind of your life and be a part of it. And we look forward to an amazing year for everyone. We wish nothing but the best for everyone in 2020. And until next week, be well.